Good afternoon. Thanks again for watching me on this short video where I try to talk about our economic crisis in Venezuela. The purpose of my videos are to help people understand what kind of crisis we have and what should be done by the authorities and how can we recover economic growth and prosperity in the medium run or the long run. Our economic crisis is one of the deepest crises seen in the world before. If you compare our inflation rate, which is according to the Monetary Fund, it's about 1,000,000% per year. If you compare that with the inflation that they had in Argentina, for example, by the 80s, or Brazil, or Uruguay, or even Germany and Italy after World War II, they were on the 400%, 500%. We are much higher than that. Much higher. It's unbelievable, this amount of inflation that we have. And of course, this kind of inflation is much more harmful to people than the other. All inflations, whatever the rate of inflation is harmful to people. To give you an idea, a stable country shouldn't have an inflation rate more than 1%, 2% per year. That's an economy that means it is in equilibrium, and managing equilibrium means that it can grow and still prices never go up in the same rate than the economic growth. This is a stable economy that we would like to become Venezuela. Well, what happened in Venezuela is very easy to understand, which is Venezuela used to be an important oil exporting country in the past, about 45, 50 years, and that was the main source of income for the country in terms of exports, and the government used to transform those dollars incoming into bolivars on a fixed exchange rate. With that system, very simple, the Venezuelan economy couldn't sustain a growth for about 30-35 years. But what happened when the oil revenues were not enough for that purpose, which happened, for example, in 1983, by that time, the oil revenues dropped about 25%. And of course, the amount of revenue per capita was much less rather than the years before. Because, for example, in 1955, by the time of the General Jimenez's government, Venezuela used to export almost 2 million barrels per day. But we were only 5 million people country. So the amount of oil per capita at that time was much higher rather than we had by the 1983. But unfortunately, the leadership of Venezuela, and when I'm talking the leadership, I'm not referring only to the political, I'm more referring to the whole factors that intervenes, that influence the decision of countries. Private sector, economic, private sector, military, the labor unions, and the professionals association, and all these political factors never realized that the situation that we had before the Black Friday could be repeated again. So we have to modify our way to exchange dollars into currency, into national currency, and how to proceed for an economic policy to foster the economic sector different from oil revenues. And that was a dilemma, it has always been a dilemma, but because it implies to modify the whole economic structure of the country and the whole, I would say, distribution system of the currency and foreign currency in the country. It means that our international relations should be changed. For example, I'm going to say something specific. Since we were a fixed exchange rate with a free market of dollar and bolivar, when we export, we were not competitive. We were not competitive with other countries in exporting non-petroleum goods. It means that, for example, if we were to export agricultural products or some industrial products like automobile parts and so forth, and we had to modify our exchange rate in order to become our export prices competitive with others in the region and even in the world. But as always happens in a country with a large tradition like us of a fixed exchange rate, that was a myth. So they think that we should stay like that. We should stand always as a fixed exchange country, which is a big mistake. I remember the former President Caldera said that he was a he preferred the revaluation rather than devaluation. Well, but it depends. It depends because when you want your economy to grow, and you have to think about exports, go to the transable world of goods and also services. And we have to be competitive. We have to have two main factors. We have to be a high productivity. It means the cost per capita should be competitive, and the total cost also be competitive. And we had to get into regional and world markets agreements. By fortune, we by the end of I believe Carlos Andrés Pérez #1 government, we went to the Andean Pact, and progressively we were incorporated in the regional market, integration market called the Andean Pact. And we were successful with that. We started increasing our exports. For example, the manufacturing industry took advantage of that. Remember that we used to ensemble cars, but our steel industry started developing with other foreign capital. We have to invest in developing and manufacturing automobile parts and spares, and we started selling cars into Colombia and other neighboring countries through the Andean Pact. And of course, our economy was step by step growing in non-traditional exports. But that was interrupted for political reasons during the Chavez government. We'll talk about later about this big change. The point I want to stress is that we need an economy who exports goods to other markets. We need an economy who is able to sell Venezuelan products, agriculture, in other markets. Like, for example, the people from Chile have been doing for many years. You see, for example, here in the United States, if you go to a supermarket, you see the wine sector, a lot of wine, comparing Chilean wine with this as extraordinary quality wines, competing with the Italian wine, the French wine, the Australian wine, the South African wine, and with good prices and so forth. And that's just an example of what we should do in the future. Of course, we have Venezuelan people think that we are rich. We are not rich. We do not produce enough goods and services to be rich. But we have a potential, which is not only oil. We have a potential because there are some important sectors of our land which could be directed towards exportation of agricultural products, which is not a sin. It's very important nowadays. The agriculture is taking every year, every century, much more importance because the war is exigent in the quality of food. And we have the land, we have water for this, but we need infrastructure and we need management. I think that besides having the potential natural resources, we need real managers, real person who cares about the day-to-day production to be productive and to be producing with enough quality to be competitive in other markets. And that's going to be important change to do in the future. The other sector that I think that we should focus is, of course, the manufacturing sector and the aluminum industry, the steel industry, and all these derivatives. We started doing this with the Venezuelan corporation in Guyana, but those corporations have been managed by state administrators, and unfortunately, the managers that come from the state are not as good as do come from the private sector, because the management from state origin are influenced by political factors, and they are designed, they are appointed as political factors, and of course we need to modify this way of thinking. That's why I am strongly focus my thought in that we should privatize those corporations that we have in the aluminum and steel sector, and even in the electricity sector, because when we import capital, we are importing technology, we are importing management, and we need, because we don't have. I understand we have very capable people working outside of Venezuela, they are professional, but we need a lot of people here in Venezuela to accomplish economic growth and economic development. The other factor that I would say is quite important is we need to have a very strong institutional state. The branch of power, the executive power, the legislative power, and the judicial power, they have to be quite independent. They have to be quite independent because it gives it the necessary check and balances that a society needs to function, and it gives to the foreign investor a kind of comfort situation about the risk they are assuming in bringing money to Venezuela. So my point is that that is a very, very Venezuelan problem, and we have to understand, and our political sector have to understand, but we need to foster the separation of three powers in the government and the public sector. The other thing that we need to foster is, Venezuela is nominally almost a federal state. We have 24 states. We have a lot of municipalities, but they are not independent. They are not independent because the political factor coming from the centralized organization has a lot of influence on that, not only in electing people, but also in management and decision, political decision at that level. But what makes a really country strong in terms of institutional sector and strong in possibility of economic growth is to have a very well established federal state, provinces, whatever you call them, municipal, which are autonomous and independent from central government. It means that those local authorities have to raise their resources, the revenues from the local import taxes. That there has to be established a kind of shared, a fair share of some revenues, for example, like petroleum, to be shared. But those revenues shouldn't be the most important. The most important is the factors that have to be developed by local authorities and economic sectors in the local authorities develop, for example, agriculture, manufacturers, whatever. So we have to spread out in our territory the economic activity and not concentrate it only in the center of the. That's a big change also, because the political mentality of many of our leaders is to have the whole power in Caracas, and that is a big mistake. The power to be efficient has to be shared with others. And most developing countries, industrializing countries, are many examples. The political power, it has to be shared among the population, among the region, so it can, independent of what happens in the central government, local governments continue functioning, developing their own plans and programs, and even they have to have some attributes, some legislation to support them in developing their own economic measures, given facilities and to others sectors. And the final problem that we have to solve is about our armed forces. Unfortunately, the last government of Chavez and Maduro gave the military the power of managing the whole productive sector in the country. They manage petroleum, the oil, they manage the mining sector, they manage the manufacturing sector, they manage the public utility sector like water and electricity, they manage the communication sector, they manage, in the last 3 years, they have been taking care of the import and distribution of foods and groceries, let's say, in the country. So they have a huge organization that manages the country. And besides that, since they manage the customs, the boards and so forth, and they have been developing some non-sentence business like the gasoline exportation, illegal exportation. And this is a big problem for this country, how to redimension the military sector. I understand we need a very institutional military sector in the country, but we don't need this kind of military we are having, and we have to redimension that, and we have to convince their current leader, not the current, the future leader of the military, that the military sector has to have a space in the political institutional of the country dedicated to protect our border, to care for the internal security, and support some other civil activities. But no, they don't have to become the power behind the power. For example, the election system is handled by them at the end of the game. because they supervise the whole election and they know what the results are. They intervene and everything. We need to change this. So our future governments, people, we have to confront a lot of conflicts, and we have to have what I call a large consensus for handling or management the government in the future. A large consensus between the important factor, the church, for example, the same military, the leaders of the military sector have to understand that their mission has to be redimensioned. They have to be diminished to a certain level that is needed to support the rest of the economic activity. There is a belief in many sectors in my country that it's enough that Maduro leaves power. No, it's not enough. It's just the beginning of a new era, and power era, of a new opportunity to become a Venezuela, a developed country, and a country with prosperity and people who enjoy living in a beautiful country like my country, Venezuela, which is now under the hands of a wrong people with wrong purposes, and is creating an enormous harm to our society. Well, I think that's thank you so much for listening to me again. I've done this in English because it's my purpose that other people from the region and from the English-speaking friends could understand in English. I'm not the best in English, but I try to explain in single words what I feel about the future of my country. Thanks very much.